It is time to get informed, America. Hi, Dave here. Hope you're all having a great day. Now, yesterday we spoke a little bit about the change in narrative that we've seen coming from the Biden campaign. He flew to Pennsylvania for a 12-minute speech, basically laying the blame of violence at Trump's doorstep. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, if you go back just before, say, let's move maybe just a week ago, the line from the media, the line from the line from mainstream media, rather, the line from the Biden campaign was sort of one: there's no violence. Everyone's peaceful protesting. If there is violence, it's from Trump supporters. And then also, well, if there is some violence against you, then you kind of deserve it anyway because you're bad people. That was basically the line. But the number one was peaceful protest. That famous shot of the CNN guy reporting from Wisconsin with the chyron and CNN saying peaceful protest. Behind him, of course, was a burning building. But then we started they sent out the memo. They changed the narrative because they realized that the political winds were blowing against them. They could only kept on this narrative of peaceful protesting, no violence, so long, and then they pivoted to. Now that polling data and as Americans are like, no, I don't believe you. I can look out my window and see a burning building. I can look out my window and see a mob calling for me to come down so they can hang me or beat me or kill me or whatever, or to give up all my property to them. And, I can see that with my own eyes. And then when I turn on CNN, they're telling me something very different. And particularly as this has moved out of, say, what we might call lefty Portland or something, and that's fine. That's the way it has had that sort of politics for many years. It's known as a place like that, sort of like San Francisco. But now this violence, now this mass protesting, which has turned into rioting, made its way into a battleground state. Things have shifted quickly, and now Wisconsin is very much in play as we're moving into the election here in November. But I remember maybe a month ago, I did a video for all of you about talking about polling data, and many of you basically told me I was full of crap with reporting what was going on in the polls. Now they have changed just a little bit. But something else that's going on besides the race has been tightening, particularly in the battleground states, and that really is where there's the 6 battleground states. That's really where the fight is. You've got North Carolina, Wisconsin, Florida. Of course, in the upper Midwest with Wisconsin, Michigan, and there's Pennsylvania as well. So states like that, Arizona potentially. So that's where of course we have this national popular vote versus electoral, and Trump still has a chance basically because he can win some of these states and the way the electoral college works, despite Biden potentially being up nationally 3-4%. Biden can certainly win the national vote by 3 or 4%. I believe Hillary Clinton won by 2.5 or 3%. Of course, still lost the electoral college. But as we stand now, things have shifted. Where have they shifted? In the betting markets. And you may have seen this passed around a little bit, but this is potentially where what you might call where the money is. Not what, a poll you see here and there, or a poll that shows Biden up by 12 nationally or something like that. Where does the betting market go? Let's take a look. This comes from Real Clear Politics, the betting odds. I guess they cobble from a couple of different sources. Of course, you could see Biden here in the blue, Trump there in the red, and they crossed. So here now Trump was. Let's look here. This goes all the way back to so early March, right? This crossed. Or I'm sorry, Trump was ahead. In the betting markets, and I think this jives with what most of us saw. And we got coronavirus, and then things crossed back. Biden took a lead in the betting markets. Look at the date here. The specific date. So June. Let's call this just early June. Let's say they crossed. What happened in early June? We know what happened in early June. We had the George Floyd death on the 25th of May, I believe it was. And then shortly thereafter, everything shifted, didn't it? It was no longer about COVID per se. It was no longer about lockdowns. It was no longer about Trump coming out of this, and this was also before before the economy was destroyed, basically, as news was coming into that, as the consequences of COVID were coming, and of course the story was no longer Trump coming out of impeachment victorious, or at least acquitted, if you want to call it that. It was really the protesting. It was really this mass social movement that gave Biden a huge boost in the polls and in public sentiment. And in fact, something I mentioned with Rodney last Friday was polling for BLM, the movement, the organization, not the sentiment, which is something that we differed over a little bit. Just, Black Lives Matter as a sentiment, most people agree with that, but Black Lives Matter as a political movement, even then, I believe it went at some point in June or July, went over 50% support for the first time ever. But since then, because of everything that's been going on in the streets, rightly or wrongly, wherever you want to place blame, the violence is there, but support for the movement has gone down. In fact, is underwater. And then so here we are. This was, by the way, back when I probably did that video about polls, we were somewhere around here, by the way. Biden had basically like a 60% chance of winning. And then it's been a battle. But as things have turned, as these protests have gone on and on, as violence in the streets has continued unabated, as President Trump said, okay, Chicago, okay, Portland, okay, Wisconsin, whatever, let me send in troops. And they go, no, get out of here, Trump, you suck, you're a loser. People see that. And, night after night, the mainstream media might be able to get away with this for a little while. And indeed, if the election were held a month ago, Biden would have won, and probably massively. But the election's in November. And now we've got another 2 months. We've seen basically the fallout of that. Biden was essentially riding a wave of public sentiment that was many people were outraged over George Floyd, and it just built and built and built and built. But but the movement basically, it didn't burn itself out, but the bad actors basically took over, and it's become nothing but chaos and violence in the streets. And of course there are many, many peaceful protesters, but within them are bad actors. And then once something is declared over in terms of a protest, with cops telling you are no longer a peaceful protest, you must disperse. And when you don't disperse, it's potentially you're there at a riot, basically. So people do have the right, and I think people do have the right to protest, obviously, but peacefully. And Chris Cuomo, CNN's Chris Cuomo, infamously asked a little while ago, where does it say that protests have to be peaceful? Well, it actually does say that in the Constitution, the right to peaceably assemble, not violently assemble. But back here we are. So look at what happened. They almost touched just a couple days ago, and we've seen a bit of a bounce back for Biden, a little bit of a separation. Because I don't think money, smart money, betting money was ready to put Trump as a favorite. But this is what they're seeing. They're seeing a movement in the polls, a movement in public sentiment. Now people who are putting their not hard-earned dollars, just putting their money where their mouth is, essentially, are betting that this thing is much closer, and Trump's odds are much, much higher than they were going back to July and in early August. So this is, as they say, a horse race. Now, interesting thing here, where might we be headed? I talked about things going on in Black Lives Matter, and Biden getting a lot of support for that, for what was going on out in the streets, and many people feeling basically angry at the situation and wanting police reform, and seeing Biden as the best guy to lead that. But what else might have been going on? Here's a really interesting chart that basically takes this blue line here, this Joe Biden line, and plots it against something else very interesting. So here we are. Here's this red line here, Biden and Trump betting odds. Now, what you'd see basically along a zero here, see that right here. So anything below zero is Trump favored. Anything above zero is Biden favored. So here, if we go back, so you could sort of see, it sort of mirrors Biden's chances almost, right? That's pretty close to that. That's basically what that line is. So what we got, as Biden's above zero here, he's favored. He's favored. And as he's coming down, he's coming close to the zero mark where anything below that, then Trump will be favored. Okay, fine, easy enough. Now look at this blue line. COVID cases, 7-day moving average. COVID-19 cases. It tracks. Now, of course, I mentioned the social argument that Biden was riding a crest of public sentiment. And it was helping his chances of winning, increasing his lead in the polls. But what else was going on? Of course, COVID cases. We had a huge explosion of COVID cases. That second wave, if you want to call it, or just the ending of the first wave. As we saw the outbreak in the Sun Belt states, here in Florida where I am, that's when, back when, open the beaches, you're going to kill everybody kind of a thing. Well, that never happened. We heard about, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, of course, California as well. Excuse me. That's where we had that after the virus had basically moved out of, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, made its way down into the Sun Belt, into the South, and then West, as we saw that massive explosion in cases, and we saw new lockdown orders. And while all that was going on, Biden, as cases rose, the increases of Biden's chances rose with it. So Biden became increasingly more likely as the virus continued to spread. Now that cases are going down, Biden's support is also going down. So we have two things going on here. We have it's cultural and medical pandemic is going on as well. So if cases continue to dive as they have been, as cases continue to go down, what does that mean for Biden's chances? Does it mean his chances will go down as well? Now, there's another potentially a social argument here on this chart as well with this black line. Google trends for cancel culture. Of course, we know what cancel culture is when someone says something potentially offensive or offensive to some groups of people. They try to get them fired, get their lives ruined, have them, out of a job and, can't find work anymore because you said something bad one day. People looking for this. This became a really hot topic, certainly over the summer. We've seen an increasing this. Now, as the BLM movement and as people were criticizing it and were seeing themselves maybe get canceled, so people were searching for it, kind of got mad about that as well. That crested. Maybe there's some pushback in the culture. So we basically have COVID cases and cultural stuff going on, the cultural war going on. And we've seen this crest. It moves in waves, up and down. Now, it appears I don't know where we're looking at. The outlook for COVID cases over the next 2 months, I would assume would trend down. I would think they would continue to trend down because they're just, we're not to say we're running out of people to infect, but in a sense, that's kind of what it was in New York State. That's certainly what it was in New Jersey, Connecticut. And as it's basically the virus COVID has almost worked its way entirely through Florida. I just looked at the chart of deaths per date on Florida, and it's like 10. It's really low. It's been moving down and down and down. So COVID has worked its way through most states, although it remains to be seen what happens now that some places are opening up schools. So that could be a factor. That could potentially be a factor. If you accept basically what we're seeing here, if you assume the black line is culture and the blue line is cases, if you accept the idea that black is a proxy for the culture war, as that turns, what does that do to Biden's chances? And then as cases go down, will that make Biden go down? So it just remains to be seen what's going to happen. Of course, we're here. There's basically 2 months left in the race. And, as 2020 has shown, a lot can happen very quickly and things can turn. But what I will leave you with today is that the race has changed dramatically from when we were talking about this just 2-3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. The ground has absolutely shifted as COVID-19 cases go down and as public sentiment turns against what they know has been bad actors in the streets and authorities seemingly unwilling to do anything about it. So it remains to be seen what develops as we go along. And of course, I will be here for all of you to help you get informed on what's going on. And if you are watching here on Facebook, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button and share this video. Of course, comment down below. What are your thoughts? What do you make of these? What do you think of this data that I presented to you today? If you're watching on YouTube, please comment down below, subscribe, hit the like button. We would certainly be honored. And head on over to informedamerican.com where you can get real smart news in your inbox every day. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.